I'm not sorry. Don't wanna hear your side. This is it, this is the last time. No chance to make it right. And I will choose to stand here silent, watching all your bullshit smiles. I know the truth, I know what happened when he walks you down the aisle. No one's ever loved me quite like you. It's all it takes to make the man your fool. This is it, and I'm not sorry. I don't care about your life. This was it, that was the last time. I don't care to
Yo. Yeah, we just taped an episode, so it's funny. This is our second one. We never do this, but here we are. So, Hey, welcome to episode Red River podcast 96, I guess. I don't know, something like that. So, but today we have my buddy Rob G back on the podcast, currently on some international shit. He's over in Paris. So, what's up, Rob?
Bonjour. Hello. Good morning to you guys. Good evening for me.
What do you do in Paris? Yes, thank you for coming back. But like, I didn't even get a chance to talk to you. What are you doing in Paris?
My fiance lives here, and we have been separated by the pandemic and the elements for 21 months. So after almost 2 years apart, as soon as I was able to get vaccinated and get over here, I got over here. And wow. Yeah, and it's both our birthdays. Actually, you guys are talking to me mere hours before my birthday. So, and hers
Happy
is
birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. And hers is a few days after me. So it just seemed reasonable for us to celebrate together. So yeah. And also things are I don't know if you noticed, things are a little crazy in the US. So going to another country is very surreal and feels, I don't know. I just like being in a place where no one knows who you are, no one gives a shit, and people follow the rules.
Really? So that's what you gather from there? Because I've never been there. So like, I guess, is that something that you notice now? But also, what's some cool shit that you're doing out there?
Well, I mean, look, ironically enough, I'll bring it to Henry Rollins because he's in our doc. But I think he was quoted as saying, it might have been in one of his early books. I found it recently. It was like a page of him saying, like, if you can travel the world or just get out of the country, do it, because the life experiences are so different. And that's I have a lot of family still in Argentina, in South America. So when I was younger, we used to go every summer. And yeah, I mean, I can't recommend traveling because it's so weird because you feel like you're literally in a completely different world, like the culture, the food, the way people respond and react. And yet there's so many similarities. And that's kind of the beautiful thing is like, we are all the same. We all just want to eat well and love each other and try to do cool shit while we're still here. So it's great here.
Yeah. That's basically like my theory too. And I love.
I wish I spoke the language better. That's my fault though.
Voulez-vous avec moi, man? Come on.
La la oui oui.
I can say those things. Yeah.
Je m'appelle Sam. Tu t'appelles comment?
Well, and by the way, I mostly eat good food, but right downstairs from like literally at the bottom of my girlfriend's apartment is McDonald's. Yeah. And I like to go for a Royale with cheese.
Yeah.
that's what it's called here.
So random question, but like, it's funny you bring up McDonald's. Like, does it still taste like McDonald's in France?
Dude, you know what? It's, when I first got here a couple of years ago, we did both McDonald's and Burger King because she insisted that Burger King was better here. And I'm like, they're both garbage food, but I like it, but it's, on this trip, McDonald's is dope. It's way better here. And they have a much more elaborate menu. Like even their breakfast menus got like donuts and all sorts of like pastries and stuff. And I'm like, wow.
Do they still sell beer in European McDonald's? I remember when I went in the 90s, they had beer.
I think so. Yeah. I didn't get it this time, but I remember the last time I was in town, we did order beer with our food. So I mean, stuff like that just makes me happy that's an option.
Did you recreate the Eiffel Tower thing from Superman 2?
Not on this trip.
All right, maybe the next one. But so you have a documentary coming out, and it's I
Yeah.
believe the second time that you made a documentary. The first one was the Psycho one.
Right.
Man, so cool. You know, like I wish that I had the wherewithal to make a documentary, but you choose to do something. The subject is something that's so dear to my heart, Brian's heart, on mixtapes, and it's called
Yeah.
Analog Love, man. So just tell everyone what it's about.
Well, so as you mentioned, I did do a documentary called The Psycho Legacy, which I think came out in 2010. And I think what people don't realize, and I still don't realize it, is that these things, especially when you're doing it independently, like nobody, and I know you can relate, especially with the music and the band stuff. Nobody has ever in my entire life paid me to do a creative endeavor ever. Like this is all. I know people think, oh my God, he made a movie. He must have made it. It's like, dude, no, I work a day job when I work and I do this on the weekends. And Psycho Legacy took me 3 years and I loved it because I loved the Psycho movies. And in that moment in time, nobody had done something like that. But it took the life out of me. And so if I was going to do a documentary again, my rules were, all right, it has to be something that I know I can be comfortable dying over a little because it will take my life force away. And I can't take 3 years because that's too much time. Analog Love took 6 years. So it was double.
Oh, double
the last doc. And you know, that was the thing. So Joe Madry is credited as writer. So it's me, my buddy Joe, and Buzz Wallach, who shot it and produced it. Technically, we took those roles, but it's all 3 of our movies. Like all 3 of us technically wrote, directed, and put it together. And Joe had written a book and made a documentary called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, which is excellent. Great horror.
So good.
Yep.
And so we had met and we were chit-chatting about doing something together. And the conversations kept leaning towards horror stuff. And I was just like, I just don't want to do another horror documentary. It's too much horror all the time, and love the genre, but it's just too much. Anyway, long story short.
Let me interrupt for 1 second. What were you thinking?
What was what?
What were you guys thinking? Like what were you guys playing around with idea wise, horror?
Well, you know what? I could tell you one idea because he's putting it out as books right now, and I'll give him a plug. You know, he is, and I know a lot of people claim to be this, but he is an authority on Stephen King. Like he has read every book, he's seen every movie, he knows who wrote what. So I think he wanted to do one thing he pitched me was doing a film about Stephen King's adaptations. And so I'm going to look up the name right now. He's instead decided to make it into a book series, and the first volume just came out. And what it is I think it's called Adapting Stephen King, Joe Madry. And what it is it's not just like, hey, he wrote Carrie and then here's the Carrie movie. He went and read like every draft of Carrie and every person that was attached to explain what ideas made it to the final version. Wow. And I think that's fascinating. I mean, even just in the, you know, George Romero was supposed to make The Stand at one point. So there's so many little hidden secrets.
Yeah, we're knee deep in our tournament on Facebook with the Stephen King adaptation tournament, you know, so we're down to like the last like 10 or 11. So funny that you mentioned.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah,
let's go back to like you said. So you guys derailed from the horror idea because you wanted to avoid it, and
I wanted to, not him. I'll give credit where credit is due. And I, you know what? I can't remember the specifics. I think I honestly think because he's like a year or two younger than me, and I think I know this sounds funny, but one day we're talking about music, and I was like, I'm a Nirvana guy, and he's like, I'm a Pearl Jam guy, and I'm like, oh, because you're a year younger than me. And so we got into the Pearl Jam versus Nirvana debate, and we challenged each other. And we made each other mixes, the case for Nirvana and the case for Pearl Jam. The only rule was no singles. It had to be
deep cuts,
you know, stuff from their albums that wasn't released as a single. And that just started our conversation. And again, you know, we are of the age group that remembers mixtapes and mix CDs, and just what that meant to give it to a girl or to give it to a bandmate to try to turn them on to new music. And that was something I was like, all right, I'll spend years doing that because I love music. My defaults always go back and forth. Like I'll do something genre related, and then I'll dive into something music related,
Same.
And
as a Nirvana guy, what are some of the songs that you put on that mix? What are some of the deep cuts that you blessed him with?
Oh my God. Hold on. Let me bring it up, because I thought this mix was flawless.
Did the Guilt make it in there? Because that's a banger.
You damn straight. Yeah, it
yeah.
did actually. Yeah. Hold on. I'm just going to pull up the case for Nirvana. And I like the case for Pearl Jam, but I feel like it's an unfair. I feel like it's unfair because the catalogs.
Yeah.
But I love Pearl Jam's first 2 records. I just don't think there's things after that are good, but I don't think anything's as great as those first 2 records.
I'm with you.
Okay, the case for Nirvana. And of course they were short. So Breed, Aneurysm, Drain You, School, Turn Around, Oh the Guilt, Very Ape, Territorial Pissings, Son of a Gun, Negative Creep, Curmudgeon, Milk It, Lounge Act, Return of the Rat, Marigold, Spank Through, Talk to Me, which is an unreleased bootleg. On a Plane, Something in the Way, the BBC version where they play it all heavy, and You Know You're Right as the final song.
Solid.
You blessed him.
Yeah.
You blessed him.
He was impressed.
Yeah. Like I always went when I talk about Nevermind, the second half is I always thought that was like the brilliant side of it. The first was cool, but once you get to like Territorial, like Lounge Act, to me, like Lounge Act is the shit. Like that's like that bass line, but man, and for you as well as me, like Nirvana showed me how to play guitar. It was very important for that, because I grew up loving metal, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't play one. But once Nirvana came around, it really, it's a cliche to say, but it's true. That's when so many local bands are like, oh, I could do this. I could play this. And from there, like, songs were born. So very cool.
No, totally. I can't remember. I know we did a deep dive last time I was on, so I don't remember I told you the story, but I think the first time I tried to play guitar was because like Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me was like the #1 hit. And I'm like, I want to be like Def Leppard. And like, I brought a guitar home and I'm like, this doesn't sound like Pour Some Sugar on Me. Like, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, all right, well, that sucks. And then it wasn't until Nirvana came around that I figured out Teen Spirit. And I'm like, oh my God, we could do this.
It's
the same effect the Ramones had on a lot of people,
Oh yeah.
And
well, because they focus like on the song too, and such a leap too, from Bleach to Nevermind, and it's just because of Butch Vig and his production. I guess he cleaned it up a little bit, and then you get to.
I think Dave Grohl had a lot to add to it though too.
You think so? Oh no, for sure. But I mean, as far as like the sound too, but then you get In Utero, which I think coincidentally is the perfect balance of both. In Utero is like, like if you smash those two together. But the album that I listen to the most is still Incesticide. I think Incesticide has like the bangers. And I love that you put Son of a Gun on there, because I thought it was so simple. That chorus is so catchy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like their REM sort of vibe.
Yeah. So you go down the music hole, and then from there you guys make each other mixtapes, and what's the light bulb?
I think, well, there was a funny story that we were exchanging. We were talking about somebody that we knew who's married and who had an ex that was unhappy in their lives, that asked this married guy for a mixtape. And our reaction was like, you don't ask a married man for a mixtape. What are you, nuts? And it was like talking about that made us like, what is that? Does anybody even remember that is a thing?
Yeah.
And so, you know what, honestly, I started naively the way that I do everything, in that I worked at Tower Records for many years. And then when I was in LA, one of the earliest jobs I had was at Amoeba, and I worked there for 2.5 years, something like that. So immediately in my brain, Buzz Wallach is my producer and camera guy, and him and I had literally shot and worked on hundreds and hundreds of behind the scenes Blu-ray features. Like, we were both always hired to go shoot it, the stuff that ends up on special features of home video releases. And so he was my go-to guy. I pitched it to him. He's a little bit younger, so he's more of a mixed CD guy, but he just loved the concept and the idea he just said it just felt like there's heart to it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to make, something that has a little bit of heart to it. And music always is the quickest way. And so I immediately knew, like, okay, who could I get to? Well, there's obviously so many characters that I worked with at Amoeba. So it's like there's at least 4 or 5 people that I could ask there. And I'm always of the mindset, just start. Because if you keep thinking about things too much, then you talk yourself out of it. You're like, I don't have enough money, whatever. It's like, dude, we have a camera, it's the weekend, and I worked at a record store. We have at least 4 or 5 people we can talk to. And for some reason, once it's a thing, once you start and it's real, then you can't stop. And from there, I did exactly what I did kind of when we started Icons of Fright, my website from 2004, which is, well, who would I want to talk to? And so it was pretty easy. It was like, well, I love Henry Rollins. I think he'd be great. I have such incredible fond memories of the Muffs way back from '96, seeing them at CB's throughout the years.
What a
so
killer,
I had to go for Kim.
I know, but that's such a it's like amazing to see her on there. I totally forgot she was on there. So, but
and bittersweet because obviously she's no longer with us.
Great song,
but I loved her, and I thought she was freaking hilarious in the doc and in real life too.
All your talking heads were great on it. And when you mentioned, not to interrupt you, but about a film with heart, you so nailed that, because as a music fan, I get nostalgic seeing the cassettes, and I'm thinking back about making mixtapes and stuff like that. But it really it highlights just not the music, but the connection of music between human beings, where you have the daughter and the father and couples and people sharing these things with each other. It just really connects.
What we
and
I was going to say, we do talk through mixtapes too. I love that I think it was mentioned in the very beginning. So I wanted to say that it's like it was a way to like communicate, and that's one thing that I truly miss about it. But sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. And I mean, good. That was the whole point. And it was interesting. I mean, documentaries in general, you always have a rough idea of what you think it's going to be. And it never ends up like that, because things end up changing. People say things that kind of make you rethink it. And basically there is an entire, if you could believe it, there's an entire cut of this movie that existed that didn't have the father-daughter thing between Hazel and Trey, like just the beginning. And what I noticed is, people of our age group get it and they're nostalgic for it and they miss it. And it had some heart, but for some reason, I don't know, something was missing. It just felt like, not to knock other projects, because I will watch any music documentary on any subject. It's just like my go-to when it comes to docs. But I think there is another mixtape one out there somewhere. I forget the name of it, but it seemed very technical. And I was not going for technical. I was going for the emotion of it. And when we figured out, like, well, you know what I should do is I should help Hazel make a mix for her dad. That was the heart, because now a kid her age will understand it through her eyes. And that's that. It made everything come together, just like that through line of like, okay, now we get it because we're of an age group, and they get it. And somebody had said to me early on when they saw the final version, like, you captured the feeling of making a mixtape rather than explaining it and telling people how to do it. It's like, no, like I remember, like, and as I love anybody that watches, even when I mention it to people, like that this exists, they will immediately tell me a mixtape story. It's like, it never fails. Like, oh yeah, I made a mix, and they'll tell me something incredible. And that was kind of the whole reason I did it. I was like, oh yes, this is, if it gets people, I mean, look, especially the last couple of years, communication has been less than stellar. And it's like, if we break things down, we're all human beings with the same kinds of feelings, and we need to get back to communicating with each other. And I think through music is perfect. So
I think just that wraparound story, if I may call it that, definitely that it speaks to you as a creative. I think that you were able to see this draft and still feel like something was missing, and then you add something which speaks to your talents, that you knew something was missing, and then you added something that was so fucking crucial to the overall part of it. Obviously it's not like we're spoiling anything, but once this is the through line through through the whole documentary, and then like the way it ends up and stuff like that. It's just like really cool. It was a really cool idea that like you would have had a documentary about mixtapes, and we all would have been happy. All your talking heads were great, but you get this like little extra part of it where it's just you and Hazel making this mixtape. It's so cool. Like and it's funny. She mentions one thing about pulling out the CDs, and she's like, these don't have words. I was like, yeah, I remember that, because like sometimes when you get rid of like the case, you're like, what the fuck is this again? So
it's like, what band is this? I don't remember.
I also like her shock when the realization, like you got to play these all in real time.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's not like you're not dumping it on and then just putting it on a CD. You're playing it through.
Yeah, I want to be respectful. She identifies as they now, and so I want to be. Okay. But I'm still not good at remembering exactly when to say the pronoun. So if she happens to catch this, I apologize. Hazel. That's why I always call her by her name, because then I don't.
All right, we'll do Hazel
by they's name.
Gotcha. Yes.
But no, it was gold. And again, it was finding, like, a perfect example is Chris Carmina, who is the Amoeba manager. He was my Amoeba manager that I worked with. He kept telling us all these great stories about his dad. And so it became clear that obviously that his dad was his connection to music. And I don't know if we got it just right in the doc, but basically he was saying it was his dad. His dad was not a musician, and making mixes was his way of expressing himself like a musician. And then I just happened to be like, is your dad like coming to town anytime soon? And he's like, he's coming next weekend. And I'm like, oh my God, do you have that tape he gave you? And can we shoot with you? And he's like, absolutely. And that's all in the doc now. And I mean, there's something so sweet about seeing a photo of a little baby Chris sitting on his dad's lap, and then seeing them around his table talking about mixes. So it was magical to find those things, and you just kind of roll with it. And you're like, yes, this is how we illustrate what music means to us.
And it comes to life for sure. And I remember in particular, it's funny, the parent angle, my mom had shit taste in music, but I remember in her Volvo, she had this one mixtape that we would listen to. I must have been 5, 6, 7, or 8, like super young. And that was the cassette that I always wanted to listen to, because it was a mix of bangers. It had like 99 Luft Balloons, but like the German version or whatever singers that was. It had Billy Joel's Honestly. I feel like it was the very beginning of showing me the importance of melody, because everything on that cassette had just really great melodies. And it was a mixtape. And like I never forgot that mixtape. I wish I find it and see the track listing, because there was some songs that I remember, some songs that I don't. But definitely like that 99 Luft Balloons in particular was such a great, catchy song that from that moment.
Sometimes those mixtapes of our youth too, like I listen to the mixtape so much. When I hear a song and I'm listening to the album now, I'm expecting to hear the next song on the mixtape in my head. Yeah. It's so ingrained in there.
Yeah. It's funny now. The last several years, I haven't done it in the last year or two because the world has fallen apart. But before that, back in the good times, every year for my birthday, I got really, and I think it was inspired by when we started this project. I would make a CD mix for everybody that I would just make like a stack of 50, and I would give it to everybody that I saw on that day. And the way I made mixes in the last couple of years, back then it was a more individual one-on-one kind of trying to feel things out. But it goes back to the first tape that Sam was talking about, is I wanted no fluff. It had to be a catchy banger every song. And so I'll send you, actually, on Spotify and Apple Music, I've created a bunch of playlists that tie into the movie. Hazel's mix, she has 2 mixes. They're both on Spotify. If you just search Analog Love, you should find my account, because I named them all Analog Love, and then Hazel's mix number 1. The best of the 90s is one of mine, etc. So Hazel, I go out of my way for just bangers now.
Hazel picked some really good stuff. Was that stuff she was familiar with, that her dad played and stuff?
Oh yeah. No, okay. I mean, I didn't pick anything. Her dad, as I think we mentioned in the film, he's been a booking agent for many years for a lot of really big bands. I think like Death Cab for Cutie and stuff like that. So he's a booking agent, but he's also a drummer himself. He's in a band called Low Tom, which is awesome. And so she's grown up, they've grown up with music as a huge part of their life, as we see in the kind of finale. Tying it back to how young they are.
That finale, yeah, for sure. It's like, yeah, the song she was picking, like, I'm thinking, like, man, I love The National, I love Arcade Fire. So, like, all these things, I'm just like watching Hazel like play, and I'm just thinking, like, great taste, you know.
Hazel has incredible taste.
Yes, but I mean, sometimes we rebel from our parents, you know, like my mom and dad, like, shitty like 70s Queens disco music, and you know what I'm saying, like all that coke shit
that you know one gets me now is like, because I have two older brothers, but they're much older than me, and so my oldest brother Rudy is a diehard Bruce Springsteen fan, and so as a teen or a kid I just was like, screw Bruce or whatever. Dude, right now at this stage of my life, I've been watching every Bruce Springsteen documentary that he puts out on every streaming service. And like he sings a song with the Killers, and I'm like tearing up.
Oh, so good,
like,
that song.
Like Bruce makes sense to me now. I don't know why. It's like a funny thing about getting older.
I'm gonna send you a song. He does a song with Jack Antonoff's band Bleachers.
Okay,
man, it's so good. And like I feel like it's like, all right, Bruce. Like I feel like everyone made it now to the point where like Bruce is like the guy that everyone likes, you know, because as you get older, like those records make sense, you know. Okay. But he is just. I was the same way. Anything that I interpreted as like older people music as a teenager, I didn't even like Fugazi. I was like, I'd rather listen to Minor Threat. Fuck this shit, you know. But as you get old, yeah. But
the ear matures, you know. It's just, you know.
One day,
sometimes your head isn't ready for something, and then one day it's like, oh, okay, I get it now, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll always remember Minor Threat to Fugazi, you know, one day hearing like the Pixies, like Trump Lamont, certain things that like finally hit your ear and you're like, fuck, I completely get it. So, here's another.
I also got to mention too. Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. I'm a super Rollins fan, and I take it you are too. I mean, that must have been pretty cool being in that collection. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, you know. And it all happened. It was all pretty magical because I've always been a big fan. I've seen Rollins band before. And how did that all happen? Oh, he had done a movie with a friend of mine, and basically I got his assistant or manager's email, and he had just finished that movie, and so I messaged them, and what happened? And he was on an extended vacation to like the Amazon and wouldn't be reachable for weeks.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. And so like, it was so funny. Like a day later, when I'm told it's going to be weeks before he even reads it, Heidi is who represents him.
Wrote me back saying, girl.
Yeah. Heidi wrote me back, and she's like, oh, he already wrote me back. And he's like, he can't do it because he literally just did a documentary talking about mixtapes. And I was heartbroken, but I was like, oh, okay. Well, you know, look, if anything changes, I'd appreciate it. And literally like another day later, she wrote back and she's like, actually, he thought about it and he wants you to come over and see his mixtapes when he gets back. So I just love the idea that he's at the Amazon and thinking, do I do it? Do I not? Like, whatever. And so, I mean, I could literally take just the footage of Rollins and release that as the movie. And like, that's when we knew we had a movie, is because all of that was so good. And also, I mean, you're a diehard fan, so you tell me, but what surprised me is because he's a very, you know, actually, this is a funny story. When we started setting up, I'm sure he does this sort of thing all the time, and it's usually with people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. But Buzz is a very technical cameraman on top of being a producer, so he absolutely knows what he's doing. And I think he just asked Buzz some sort of technical question, as if like to test us. Mm-hmm. And Buzz just immediately was like, oh, well, I'm using this ring light and putting this up here so that we get this, and this is how you're going to turn out on camera, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, okay, these guys know what they're doing. I'll be more serious then, I guess. But I thought I've never seen him be more vulnerable and open. I've never heard him talking about making mixes for girls. I was like, whoa, like this is like, I've never heard this side of Rollins before. It's actually kind of cool. Like, I mean, he has I was just very surprised with things he gave us because I've never heard him that vulnerable before.
Yeah, he let you in.
That was a great thing.
he let you in, and it shows and stuff. I mean, and
I mean, we were howling when he was talking about making breakup cassettes and like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not in the movie. It's that part's in the movie, but he kept going on and on. He's like, oh, it's like me like going into the katana blades and just, you know, and we're like, oh my God, it's so funny.
You're right. Because when he mentioned, like, just in passing, I guess you kept in something where he's just like, you know, a mix for a relationship that you are thinking of. And I'm thinking like, oh, wow, man, you never really hear him like say this stuff. But I know that he's such a big music fan because like he did that podcast with Heidi and Henry.
Yeah.
So they would always like talk, like it was just very candid. And his like selections, I guess he mentions his mom, you know, so it's like, it makes sense that you grow up with like that vast knowledge. But like, it was a trip to watch him, but it was also a trip for me to watch Jonah from far because I'm a fan. You're a fan. I'm sure you've even covered a Far song somewhere along the
definitely have.
Right? Yeah. I was doing Barry White the other day and like at Mr. Like last time we played a show, it was you know, just like a couple of measures and stuff. So Jonah from Far, man, just to explain what that band meant to you and what it meant to have them do this documentary.
I mean, I love Jonah with all my heart and soul. He's a really sweet and special guy. And I mean, you know, what was it? 98 was kind of like the peak time for Pretty Polly, my band, where you and I shared a drummer for a little while there. And I mean, we didn't get any headway because it just was like, it was Long Island was a hardcore scene and then it was an emo scene and we didn't fit in either category, unfortunately. So we kind of missed out, but the biggest high point we ever had was that I was working at Tower Records at the time as a store artist, and I was in very good with the music reps. And so Water and Solutions came out through Sony. And so when they were coming to town, I went out of my way to I made a giant sign of Water and Solutions for the Tower Records that we worked at. I had a bunch of local bands just give us quotes. I just did all this stuff. And then I asked the Sony rep, how would it be impossible to get them to play on Long Island? When they swing through New York. And they're like, well, yeah, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I want to open for them. it's just get them to play here. I want to be the opening band. And sure enough, it took a lot of finagling, but they snuck in a show. I think it was at Dr. Shay's. I can't remember. It's on YouTube now.
Yeah, it is. It's up on YouTube. Yep.
The only disappointing thing about it, and I'm sure you know the deal, Sam, because you're in a Long Island band too, was it's on their day off. They're the headliner. And the deal was my band, Pretty Polly, was going to play. And then all those same bands that I got quotes from snuck onto the bill. So all of a sudden it became a Sunday matinee show with 5 bands instead of 5 bands and Far. And of course we were first. So it's like, oh, well, I guess nobody's going to see us again as usual. But, and I told this story because Jonas did the interview at my apartment. That's his shot at my place. And then a year later, he came out he does living room shows. So he came over and did a show for my birthday, which was pretty amazing the year after that. But I told him this before, and it was that I'll never forget, no matter what Pretty Polly is or what happens with us. I saw him before the show and we chit-chatted for a while and we kind of knew each other because he saw all the stuff that I did for Far at Tower Records. And there were 10, 15, 20 people tops in the venue when we started our Pretty Polly set. And he literally walked in, stood right in front of me and just headbanged through our whole set. And that was it. And I told him after, I was like, dude, that was the high point. You were my hero. Yeah. And nobody gave a shit that we were on the bill. We were the first band. And you sat there and you literally watched our whole set. And that meant the world to me back then. And 20 years later, it means the world to me now. And so that was one of the main reasons I asked him to be in the doc, is because I've never forgotten that. And then, and then he was great. He, again, he's done a lot for me. He gave me a ton of instrumental music to use as score. So half the score is unreleased Jonah stuff, and half of it is Pilot Priest, which is an electronic artist that I love. So, he put a lot of heart into the doc as well.
I love it. I love when that happens. And, I knew that there was some sort of relationship, so I'm glad you got to tell that story. So.
I was going to say the film too, it gave me a complex a little bit because I always thought my mixtape game was fire, but I never did any artwork.
Me
People
neither.
blowing me away with the artwork on these things. I just wrote it on there. My hand was smearing the ink, whatever. But
Me too.
maybe that's why there's so much unrequited love. No, I never heard back from the girls I gave it to. I should have put a picture on it. But man, people really went amazed. Did you guys do artwork on yours?
No.
I dabbled, but I never got that as elaborate as some of the people
amazing
in there, and it did amaze me too. I was like, man, I was doing this all wrong. But also, I think Henry says it, and I'm not sure I'm getting the quote right, but basically he's like no one's gonna love your mixtape more than you, because it's like
so true.
No one's gonna think it's the best thing like you do, because you think it's the best mixer. So like no one will ever get that reaction.
Well, you'll put all into it, and you're picking these songs out. You're doing the math so it all fits on one side, this and that. You give it to them, and they like, hey, how'd you like that tape? And like, oh, it's all right.
You got to do the math. No, the biggest compliment someone would say to me before Google was like, yo, I'm trying to think of the name of this movie, and I know that you know it, or this TV show, or this album. That was like, I'm sure they came to all three of us doing the same shit. But the other highest compliment was like, yo, you got to make me a mix. You know what I mean? Like, because they know that we were about that life to make them mix. So speaking of mixes, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Tom Talks, which is Tom Segura.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy was on talking about being from Long Island. I was like, who the fuck is this? And he's talking about Grave Diggers. He's talking about PM Dawn. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? How is he from Long Island? I never met him. Then he was like a little bit older. His name's Christian. And his episode of the Tom Segura podcast was probably the best podcast episode I heard this year. It's unfucking believable. The hip hop.
Had you not heard of him before that appearance?
Never.
I never had.
Oh my god! I got to send you links to his breakdowns.
Oh, his
because oh my god, yeah. No,
just explain what he does with the breakdowns.
Okay, so you're talking about Christian James Hand, who happens to be in my documentary as well, and so I think it was 5-6 years ago. It was probably around the time we were starting the documentary.
Sorry.
It's okay. My former roommate, Dave Foy, is also a musician, and he knew Christian and said, hey, my buddy Christian just started doing this live show where he breaks down music. And I'm like, what do you mean he breaks down music? No, he's got all the elements and he just plays them separate and puts them together, whatever. And I'm like, and he's like, do you want to go? And I'm like, sure, let's go. And the first night I saw him, he did Rush Tom Sawyer. And I'm not a Rush fan, but man, is Tom Sawyer amazing when you break it down. And Ozzy Crazy Train. That was like my first show with him. And the thing is, he plays everything separately, but he does it in such an entertaining, funny, poignant way that it feels like a history lesson about music. And it also makes you hear and appreciate these songs, even if, again, like I'm not a Rush fan, but Tom Sawyer I appreciate way more after having heard all of it separated, just the drums, then the drums and bass, which he calls the engine room, which I think is kind of fun. And so he does this breakdown show. And I think it was by the second show that he's got a little bit of a British accent that slips. So he makes a lot of British references. Then he's talking about hair metal and his Trans Am and Northport and things like that. Yeah. And I'm like, I think this is a fellow Long Islander. Oh man.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we talked after one of his shows, it was immediately like a cloak. Oh, you're a Long Islander too. Okay, I got you. And we thankfully became really good friends. Just to blow your mind some more, that same birthday show where Jonah played acoustic, Christian broke down Under Pressure by Queen right after Jonah played. So that was like my best birthday ever.
Oh man.
And that was in my apartment with like 15 people. But he's also got an incredible insight and knowledge of music in general. And the stories are for days. It's unreal.
It's unreal.
So every Monday here I'm in Paris now, but in Los Angeles, every Monday morning, he does a live, like 20-minute version of it on 95.5. But as of late, because he can't do a live version of it anymore, he's on Instagram under the session on IG.
Oh yeah.
And he literally breaks down a song like every night, and it's incredible.
It's incredible.
And some of them are like I was there. my father was ill and passed away last year in October, and I was in Arizona, just stuck there. And I would look forward to in the evenings him going live. And there was one I remember catching where he decided he was doing Prince for the first time. He's breaking down Let's Go Crazy. And the guitarist, Wendy, jumped on the live thread and she started giving insight while he was doing it. And it was just like, it felt so special. Like, and that's, again, it's the way music connects us is just incredible. And what he does is magic. And I was so thankful that he did our documentary because he's one of the funniest. We only screened it for one theatrical audience and it killed. And in particular, almost everything he said killed.
In particular, so it's funny, you were talking about Pour Some Sugar on Me, right? How these are things that you wanted to learn. When I first wanted to play music, I had a guitar, but I was trying to play stuff, but I couldn't really grasp that it's 5 instruments or 4 instruments playing at the same time. Yep. In my head, I'm thinking like, well, this doesn't sound like Smashing Pumpkins to me. Like, why? But one day, a friend of mine played the rhythm track for me, and he's like, this is what you're playing. When you hear it all together, this is what, like, one person's doing this, like, it was so mind-blowing to me, being that, oh, okay, so this is all I have to do. Then somebody plays the lead, somebody plays bass and drums and sings. So when he was doing that, I was just thinking, like, it's such an important thing, because when you look at music like that, it seems like you could do it. You could accomplish it. It's like, all right, so I'll play bass and you do this. So, man, what a trip. And the stories that he told, and to see him on your podcast was really fucking cool, man. So well done on that. And
I'll send you a link to some of his best stuff, because his breakdown of Beastie Boys Sabotage is incredible.
he did it on Tom's show.
That's the song he did on Tom's show. Okay, yeah. I mean, there you go. So something like that. And I think you already know, because we talk regularly, but him and I made some new music together, because again, he's a saint, not just on air, but in real life. And he saw a lot of the grief I was going through, in particular because of my father, and just the terrible 2020 that we all had. And he really pushed me to, I told him I had songs, and he's like, let's do that. I can do that. Like, we can record in my place. I got all the equipment, and we'll figure it out. And he spent a couple of months making an album with me, and it was very therapeutic. And it's one of the best thing I've ever done by far because of him.
It's the best thing.
And I think you could say it because you heard it. And it's by far the best stuff I've ever done.
It's really good. It's like, man, it's really hard to explain. And do you have a release date for that yet? Because it's hard to like when I tell, it would be a lot easier for me to just be like, I'll listen to that link and stuff. But do you have an idea when you want to put it out?
I have no idea, only because, Analog Love is top priority now. Right, yeah. And I, this thing came out of nowhere. It wasn't meant to be anything. And I also I just don't want to upload it to Bandcamp tomorrow and without any battle plan. I want people to hear it because it's actually really good, and it means something to me. And again, Christian recorded it. It was fascinating, because if you know his show, he recorded it in the way that he does his show. I think his brain has been rewired now because of the breakdowns. So I'm like you, I have a guitar chord, chords, and then a melody. I'll do a guitar chord, and they'd be like, all right, like moving so fast, like, okay, find like a higher octave note to play over that. I'm like, what? And he's like, no, just play something higher, and I'll do it. And he's like, okay, I need you to do that for 30 seconds. And I'm like, okay, and do it for 30 seconds. He's like, all right, now I need you to do this. He just kept directing me, and I didn't know what the hell I'm like playing all this weird shit. But then he's layering it into 5 layers because he already hears it. And then he plays it back, and it's like this gorgeous guitar thing that sounds like there's a synthesizer there when there's not. And it's like he's learned all these weird tricks just from what he does, including getting me to whisper sing and doing all this kind of stuff. So, I think it's going to be called Pike Project. I haven't decided yet, but I think that's what the name of it is. And it's just 10 like pop punk songs, like the catchiest. Well, it's funny because you gave me homework. So the homework will tie into that. It's basically the album feels like a 90s mixtape to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I'm a big fan of melody, as everyone knows, and the 10 songs on top of the lyrical content, which if anyone it's just it's definitely very introspective and a lot of the things that like you went through, obviously. So it's just like I feel like you feel the album a lot, man. It's like, like you said, with your dad being sick and just the 2020 that most people had. It's like you really feel it in this, but it's done in such a pretty way. And the production, I didn't know like that he had such a hand in the production, and it makes sense because it's just so well done, and I can't wait for people to listen to it. The first song is just like immediately, like you hear it, and it's so relatable, But anyway, so yeah, let's do that. Let's just do our 5 songs real quick here. I asked you to basically pick 5 songs that you would normally have picked to put on a mixtape back in the 90s. I asked Brian to do the same thing. Brian chose 1993. I just chose a random assortment of songs.
I got the assignment wrong.
I got these. Yeah, maybe I told him wrong. I don't know. He took 93.
93 was a good year for me, so it worked out. It was actually hard to narrow down.
Oh, I picked 5 from the 90s. So, yeah, and I went as far as 99. So let's say my mix is 99.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, give me your 5 from the 90s.
All right. So I've got to go Nirvana. And again, I always try to go for like, with any mix, you're trying to either do a catchy song or you're trying to do something that maybe is a B-side or a little obscure. So people hear it and they're like, oh, I've never heard this, but I recognize that band. So my go-to is always Turnaround from Incesticide, their Devo cover. In fact, I like opening a mix with that because it's just that kick-ass Dave Grohl, like, you're like, oh, what's this? That kind of sets the tone right away. So Nirvana, Turnaround. Another one that would always make my mixes in the 90s was Concrete Blonde's Heal It Up, which is from their album Mexican Moon, which was 93. I think it was a single for sure, but it's not one of their go-to songs. But Heal It Up is the best melody that I've ever heard a female singer sing in the 90s. It's so freaking good. There's even a video on YouTube of them doing it on Jon Stewart, because Jon Stewart used to have an incredible show with musical guests back then.
Sam I Am, Quicksand.
Yeah, they were Sunny Day. They were all on it. Yeah. The only problem with Heal It Up is that it doesn't fade out. It like kind of bleeds into the next track, and I hate that because it's an abrupt ending. My third song would be Fugazi, Public Witness Program from In on a Kill Taker 93. It's their shortest song. It's their catchy song. I literally have ripped it off in Pretty Polly 10 times because I was like, oh, we can only write a song as good as Fugazi's Public Witness Program. Then we'd be great. So I love that song. This one I had to check and make sure it came out in the 90s. It was 99, but I definitely put this on a lot of mixes, mostly CD mixes. G Love and Special Sauce, Rodeo Clowns.
Oh, I love
wow.
Jack Johnson.
Which is basically just like Jack Johnson's entire like discography is that one song.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I mean, and again, you want to mix it up. You don't want the same types of songs on there.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I was going to go like electronic or Depeche Mode, but I'm like, nah, I got to go like sub pop, fuzzy pop. So I went with Sebadoh Skull off of Bake Sale, which is just like the perfect kind of like, dare I say, emo-ish song before emo is a thing. I think Lou Barlow had like the corner on emo right before it happened. So Skull, and I think they did a music video for that. I remember that on 120 minutes.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Those are my 5.
Cool.
Nice.
Langan, give me your 5 that you would put in. You picked 93, so let's do it.
From 93, yes. Yeah, it's funny. 93 was weird. Like the beginning of 93, it would have been all rock. It was the end of 93. Way electronic and hip hop. Yeah. Very big shift for me. I wasn't like fucking with any metal at that point. But I went with 93 and more of if I was making like a chill mix, you know what I'm saying? Like because chilling was important in 93. So I started with Bjork's Come to Me from her debut album. I'm a huge Bjork fan. And some Bjork, I like more than others. Debut's a very accessible album, but very laid back. Then I went to a little bit of a deep cut. It was kind of a one-hit wonder electronic song by One Dove called White Love. it was, if you heard it, you'd probably know it, but not know who it was. So if I was giving this to a lady, this would be my impress, that I know this song, that you probably didn't know who it was, but I'm trying to impress you here. Then I'm going with Orbital, Halcyon, On and On, continuing in the same vibe of electronic. And then I'm shifting to hip hop. I'm going Tribe Called Quest, Electric Relaxation. Still, a lot of production, laid back. And then going to finish it off with De La Soul's Break of Dawn, Long Island Zone. My favorite song on that album. That would be my 5.
Amityville, Never Ran, Never Will. Funny, I just got your text saying that I'm kind of low, so I'll fuck with the levels after I'm done. Bummer. All right, so I picked 5 songs, and I didn't want to go too outside of, because I'd be here picking. I don't know. I would just fuck shit up. So Portishead, anything off of Dummy, which I related to in your documentary. Anything off of Dummy, in particular, I would do Pedestal, because Pedestal was very dark, and just the beats on that. Portishead Dummy was one of those records that most people never heard, but when you played it anywhere at a party or in a car, everyone would be like, yo, what is that? Amazing. I would do Lemonheads. It's a Shame About Ray was a huge, huge record for me. It taught me a lot of things about songwriting that I wanted to, give off. So for me, Rudderless was a big fucking song. Smashing Pumpkins. I'm going to go Pisces Iscariot. The song Worse. Just that record in particular just had some really cool, like, random B-side songs. So we're off of that. My last 2, Pavement, off of Crooked Rain. I picked Gold Sounds. There was a time where I wanted to do nothing but sound like I was in the band Pavement. It never worked, but nonetheless. And the song that probably made it in the most mixtapes, and the song that I listen to now, anytime I hear REM Night Swimming from Automatic for the People, it brings me back to being like 14 and sitting in my mom's house in my bedroom. And it's half amazing and it's half a bummer when I think of like how many years have passed, for me sitting in that room listening to that song. So those are the songs that I would pick. And that was fun. Cool.
Those are great. And see, that's what I love is how diverse all 3 of our picks were. Because I heard what you guys said, and I was like, man, I have a song from that band for sure that I would have probably picked too.
Yeah. We would have been here for 3 hours picking songs for sure. Especially if I would have thrown in a hip hop song, I would have been like, I don't even know what to do right now. So Rob, so basically the doc, this is going to come out on Monday, a day before Analog Love comes out.
Oh,
so what's
cool.
What's the plan?
Well, so it's being released by a distributor called Passion River that does a lot of really cool documentaries. They just did one called Punk the Capital, which, if you haven't seen, is about the whole DC punk scene. So they're putting it out on August 17th, and digitally it'll be available for rent or buy. I believe it's on iTunes, Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube. And I think that's US, Canada, and I want to say the UK as well. And then over in Australia and New Zealand, it will be on Vimeo on demand. I think that's the only service we can get there. And on Amazon, there is a Blu-ray, which I fully produced because it was important to me that we had a physical version of a physical media documentary. So you can get the Blu-ray on Amazon. Amoeba will also have them since so many people from Amoeba are in it. And the Blu-ray, I put some extra stuff on there. There's, I think, the completely unedited tour of Henry's tapes. It's like 15 minutes.
Nice.
We did the best bits, obviously, in the actual doc, but if you want to just see that whole thing unedited, because it's great.
I do.
Yeah, I mean, it was just talking to him and getting his perspective and his stories about what these things meant to him. So there's some cool bonus features on there for the Blu-ray. And then the other thing I think I'll mention, because I think it's really cool, is it should be next week as well when this airs, but I love coffee a lot. There's a really great coffee company out in Los Angeles called Old Town Roasting, and they're big music lovers. They had done a limited edition blend for Christian for the session at one point. And so I showed them the movie early. They loved it. We're doing an analog love coffee blend this week. And it's going to be, I've already tasted it. It's delicious. It's kind of dark chocolate with a little bit of citrus and tiny touch of hazelnut. It is great. It's medium blend. And the great thing about that, other than them like, making their own coffees themselves, is they're very big on charities. And so in lieu of any, percentage, like I just want the coffee to exist. I think having coffee while listening to a mixtape is great. But we're donating a bit to ALS research on behalf of Kim Shattuck, because that's what she's succumbed to, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, for anybody that doesn't know. So buy the coffee, take your time with it while you listen to some music, and a couple of bucks is going to go to ALS research for Kim Shattuck. So
did you bring up the movie The Chase to Henry when you saw him?
Oh yeah, no, because I'm very good friends with Adam Rifkin, who directed it.
Oh, that's right. You're right. You're totally right. I totally forgot because his career, like I followed him kind of like a little after, but he also did Detroit Rock City, right?
Adam Rifkin did, yes.
Holy shit! I hate Kiss, but boy, do I love that movie.
It's a great movie, and it's really funny. He said this in retrospect now, but like when he got that directing gig, they're like, "Do you love Kiss?" And he's like, "Sure, I do." And he's like, "I wasn't really that big a Kiss fan when I saw the movie. I just needed a job."
No. And it's the best Kiss song.
Well, the beauty of that film is like it doesn't even have to be Kiss. It's about friends on a journey to go see a band they love. Yeah. That's why I love it. And I'll tell you one funny Henry story, because what I loved about almost every single person that we interviewed in this doc, including Money Mark, he did the same thing. Yeah. Almost every one of them was like, kind of like, oh, so this is only going to be like 30, 45 minutes, right? Like whatever. And then 3 hours later, they just like wanted to show us more cool stuff or keep talking. Henry was definitely that way. And he was telling us incredible acting stories, because I mentioned Rifkin and we talked to Chase. But the coolest story he told us was, because I was like, wait, you were in a David Lynch movie, right? And he's like, oh yeah, Lost Highway. He's like, oh my God, let me tell you about that. And he's like, it was so cool because he's got a tiny part where he's like a guard in a jail cell. And I think he's just walking. I can't remember if he's walking or walking somebody. But he said the coolest thing about David Lynch is like he had just discovered the band Rammstein. Nobody knew who they were yet, but Lynch was obsessed with Rammstein. And so he said when he did his acting, he's like, normally you just walk from here to there and that's it. He's like, but he blasted Rammstein so loud. And he's like, and it changed my body language. Like, even though that's not how it is in the movie, he wanted me to walk a certain way. And by him blasting Rammstein, it made me like on edge. So the way, if you see him walking in the movie, just know that David Lynch was playing Rammstein in the background really loud. And that's why his performance is the way it is. So and I was like, that's magical. And that sounds like a David Lynch thing to do. So that's cool.
I love stuff like that. And he was great. He was in, what's that other Long Island dude's movie? Joe Lynch.
Wrong Turn 2.
Yeah, man, that movie.
I loved him in that. Yeah,
I thought that was great. Like I was, like he was in Sons of Anarchy. He did a lot of cool stuff, and most importantly, he never died. I thought He Never Died was really good. Yeah, very.
I was just looking that up. I couldn't remember the name of it. I was like, if you've never seen He Never Died, that's one of my favorite things he's ever done.
Yeah, So it's really cool. But so in closing, I also want to mention real quick, just just wanted to say that the movie Lucky. We talked to Bria Grant.
Oh yeah.
Super cool, very talented. Holy shit. Like I love that movie, and that 12-hour shift movie. She made a lot. And you were one of the producers, and I know that just recently, what was it, like a DVD release or something, right?
Yeah, they put it out on DVD. I wish they would have done a Blu-ray, but I don't really have control over that sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, but
because I'm a snob and I want it to look as best as possible.
Yeah.
But yes, it is available on DVD and on Shudder, where you can see it in HD.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So shout out to her, Natasha, the director. And that's it, man. Yo, thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking time from your Paris rendezvous. I don't know.
Yes. I wish you all the luck with this, and I hope everybody watches this film, because it's a sweet film. It's great.
Thank you. I think it's going to be like a word of mouth thing where people pass it around like a mixtape.
Yeah.
That's my hope. I feel like people will be like, you have to see this thing. It's really sweet. So
it's just anytime I talk to whoever about, you know, like while I was watching it, if someone texted me like, oh, I'm watching this documentary on a mixtape, blah, 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 when it comes out, everyone was just like, I don't know, kind of into that. They're like, oh shit, documentary, like I want to see that, you know, like we're at that age where we want to have that connection to it. Like whenever someone mentions what that documentary, rewind this, like we're like,
right,
that's so good. Like, yeah, so this is the same thing. So Rob,
well, and I hope, by the way, I don't know, I mean, let's see how the COVID situation you know, is in the next couple of months. But I was really disappointed that we never got to do any sort of screenings or festivals. We were planning to do things, and like a lot of the local record stores where we're going, we're going to set up like mixtape booths and make it like a whole interactive thing. And so I would love to do a homecoming thing, maybe at the Cinema Arts Center eventually, even though the movie will be out. I think it'd be fun if we get do some sort of, I don't know, maybe a tape or vinyl. What are they called? Like just set up a shop at the theater and screen this movie. I think it would be a lot of fun for us to see together. That'd be fantastic. So I hope things clear up and we could do something like that, because I'd love to come along out and hang with you guys in person.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And you know, we have some ties to there too. I'm sure you do too. We showed Terrifier there. Terrifier and Strangers. But cool, man. Thank you. The new record is amazing. I can't wait for people to listen to it. And we will talk very soon, Rob.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Later, man.